Are you thinking what we're thinking on controlled immigration? That's what the Conservative leader Michael Howard asked the electorate in 2005. During the campaign, he repeatedly felt the need to say it's not racist to talk about controlling immigration. He didn't win the election, but perhaps he won the argument, because these days politicians won't shut up about it. UKIP's immigration policies contributed to a surge in support at Eastleigh. Labour has apologised for what it used to say on immigration. And Ian Duncan-Smith for the Conservatives is warning of an immigration crisis when restrictions are eased on Romanians and Bulgarians. Talking about immigration is popular, but how easy will it be to do something about it? David Grossman reports.
The days are dwindling until Bulgarians and Romanians have full access to UK employment markets, and the government is getting edgy. One minister suggests we're heading for a crisis, and they're desperate to find a way of neutralising public disquiet at the possibility of another large influx of foreigners.
Because the government can't do anything about the numbers of Bulgarians and Romanians planning to come to the UK, incidentally, they tell us they've no idea how many might be coming. Instead, they're seeking to change the nature of the political problem that they face. It's not about how many come, it's about how many come and claim benefits. And this, they say, they can and will do something about.
What we're trying to do is to figure out the rules that allow us to prevent individuals from staying in the UK for only a short time before claiming benefits, a rule that existed under the last government.
Broadly speaking, the rules at present state anyone wanting to live in the UK from the EU has to be economically active. That is, have some sort of job, or be a student, or have sufficient resources and health insurance so they don't become a burden. Satisfy this criteria and you have what the government calls a right to reside. Once that is established, and provided the migrant can establish that they are habitually resident in the UK, then this unlocks all of these benefits. Although many of these will be replaced by the new universal credit later this year.
It's important for the government to be robust on this, but when you look at the actual figures for the numbers of migrant workers in this country migrants who claim benefits, it's very, very low. So 8% of migrants claim working age benefits, whereas it's 15% for the working age population.
Even so, are the current rules as tight as they appear? The government says that since the self-employed are included, a would-be migrant need only declare themselves self-employed to get access to benefits. Is this perhaps a factor in the steep rise in the numbers of self-employed, up 10% or 367,000 since 2008?
Whilst the government says it wants to clamp down on abuses of the system, it's not exactly getting a lot of cooperation either here at home or from Europe. For a start, it says it wants to end so-called health tourism, where people claim free NHS care to which they're not entitled. However, at the same time, the NHS has actually relaxed the rules, making it clear that anyone from anywhere can get free treatment from a GP.
The new guidelines state anyone who is in the UK may receive NHS primary medical services at a GP practice. Just to be clear, the guidelines continue, immigration status does not affect eligibility to primary care. Practices should not inquire about patients' immigration status. The government says it's urgently looking to get these guidelines changed. But at the same time, ministers are also locked in a legal battle with the European Commission, who say that Britain is already discriminating too much against EU migrants when it comes to benefits. One answer the government is apparently considering is reform to the way benefits are paid to everyone, including UK nationals.
There's no way we can actually defend our welfare state and health services against the free movement of labour unless we similarly put restraints on people in this country. And my guess is if the electorate were asked, they would vote to go back to a contributory-based welfare, which they would know that people drawing welfare had already made their contribution.
But of course this won't happen before the restrictions on Bulgarians and Romanians are lifted next January. And anyway, public concern is far wider than just benefits.
Camille,
This school in Peterborough became the first in England where not one of its pupils speaks English as a first language. It is the sheer scale and pace of change that leaves some voters profoundly uneasy. And for all its talk of clamping down or tightening up on EU migration, the government at the moment can't do much about it.
Well, Mark Reckless is Conservative MP for Rochester and Stroud. Sarah Mulley is the Associate Director for Immigration, Integration and Communities at the think tank, the Institute for Public Policy Research. Sarah Mulley, first of all, Yvette Cooper was saying yesterday that if someone wants to move from, say, Newcastle to London for a job, they can't claim child tax credit. But if someone wants to move to London from, say, Prague, they can claim it and they can send the money to their kids back home. Does that seem fair to you?
It doesn't, and I think that's an example of where some of these European rules are in need of change. And these rules were set up in Europe at a very different time when the European Union was much smaller and many fewer people were moving. So I think we do need to look at some of those rules. But those are fairly minor glitches in the overall system, which is not to say that they're not significant, and it's not to say that they don't worry people. And
well,
it's correct
would it
that they
feel
should.
minor to you if you were losing child tax credit moving in this country?
No, absolutely not, and that's not what I'm saying. But I think there are bigger issues at stake here around the freedom of movement in Europe. The freedom of movement in Europe has, broadly speaking, been economically beneficial for the UK. And it's important to remember that the vast majority of migrants from Europe do come here to work, not to claim benefits.
Well, Mark Reckless, that's a fair point, isn't it? The DWP's own figures say 7% of working-age immigrants are on benefits compared to 17% of British people.
I mean, I think it's about more than benefits. I think most people probably in this country think immigration has been too high for too long.
Well, maybe, but just on the sort of quote-unquote scroungers claim.
Well, I mean, I think benefits are an aspect of this, and I think to suggest the fact that people with children overseas can receive child benefit for them or get quite substantial child tax credit, at least compared to their home country, and send that home to children who aren't even resident in this country. I think it's quite wrong to describe that as a minor glitch. I think it's a really serious issue.
But this 7% versus 17, what do you make of that?
Well, I think, I mean, I've never said that, you know, people sort of come here primarily to get benefits. I think it's a question of numbers. It's a question of controlling the immigration system and how many people come to our country. But you raise the benefits, and I think it does anger a lot of my constituents that people who haven't paid in this country come to the UK and then really from as soon as they get here are able to claim benefits. And I think that people don't think that's right.
Sarah Mulley, do you agree that for politicians who seem very keen to talk about immigration these days, the benefit system might be a very useful way to make an impact?
I think that migration illustrates some bigger problems with our benefit system, and migration is a very obvious example of how our benefit system has moved away from being a system primarily based on contribution. Now, I think that that's a much bigger question than immigration, but immigration is a very clear representation of that problem to people.
But would there be anything wrong with making some immigrant claimants wait longer for benefits, from instead of 3 months in some cases, 6, 9 or even 12?
No, I don't think there would, and I think there is absolutely a need for a conversation in Europe about how these rules work, because as I said before, they were designed at a very different time and we're living in a very different world now, and I think it is absolutely fair to look at those questions.
Do you think the British economy would be in a better or worse state if it hadn't been for the immigration we've had?
I mean, I think it depends on who you're looking at. I think the problem with the immigration we've had is that people at the lower end of our labour market who are competing with very large numbers of people who have come into the country, I think it's reduced their incomes.
Yeah, I'm talking about the overall state of the economy. Better or worse, do you think?
And you referred to the 17% of working age people claiming benefits, and I think part of the problem is because employers have simply been able to employ people from Poland and elsewhere. They haven't put the focus into training people in our country, and young people, we've got very high youth unemployment, where people are looking for jobs, want to get that training, and if an employer is deciding it's easier just to take someone who's coming to the country anew, that can't be right. We have to focus on getting young people in this country into work.
Sarah Mulley, is there a net economic benefit that you can quantify?
I think there is a net economic benefit at the aggregate level, but people don't live their lives at the aggregate level, and it's quite clear that the costs and benefits of migration are not evenly distributed, which is why this is such a difficult political issue.
Mark Reckless, has the UKIP surge last week concentrated the minds of many politicians, maybe particularly Conservative politicians?
I think what it says to me, and I think the party more broadly, is we have to succeed in what we promise, which is cutting immigration from hundreds of thousands to tens of thousands. And we're already a long way through that. We started with net immigration of 235,000. We've now got that down to 163,000. The number of visas issued have continued to fall. And I think we are on track to deliver that target and keep our promise to cut immigration to the tens of thousands. I think that's really, really important.
Right.
We've got to get the system working properly, secure our borders, and show that we can act in the interests of people in this country rather than having European rules telling us all what to do.
I'm grateful to you, Mark Reckless and Sarah O'Malley. Thank you. It's International Women's Day, which Kirsty and Emily are marking by